it, it was bad that they passed, but it did wake me up to reality that, death is right around the corner. In a way, just how God used it, because it snapped me to attention. It got my attention, caused me to really get closer to God and really pray to him, because I admit prior to that, I was, calling myself a Christian, carrying my Bible, but was it just an intellectual knowledge that I had and not a heart?
What is up, my crew? My name is Steven, and this is the Nook Podcast. You just heard the voice of my guest today. His name is Stephen Melniszyn, someone I only knew through Twitter prior to this conversation. I think we might all admit that social media can be more trouble than it's worth. And then you hit a bright spot, like meeting a very down-to-earth person, someone you might be really good friends with if not for the distance between you. Honestly, it's times like this when I can say that I'm actually grateful for something like Twitter. The last year and a half has been difficult for literally everyone in one way or another. I honestly want to roll my eyes just saying that because it has been said over and over again. I'm so tired of it, and I'm sure you are as well. But even in my disdain, I must admit that it has been mostly a matter of inconvenience for me. I am beyond thankful that I haven't caught the virus, and equally grateful that my friends and family who have had it got through it fairly well. Stephen Melniszyn can't say that. And as you will hear in this discussion, first he lost his father, and before he could even catch his breath and grieve, his younger brother passed away as well. This is the kind of stuff you only hear about on the news, and just hope that you don't ever have to deal with anything like it. Ever. To say that Stephen is resilient would be an incredible understatement. And I'm so grateful that he was willing to share some of what he had to walk through. I hope that you will find some deep encouragement in my conversation with Stephen Melniszyn. Maybe the easy part here is that I've never met you, and so Could you give kind of the 30-second bio? Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. So let's see. I just turned 44, July 6th. Grew up in New York for most of my life. Joined the military back in 99. Came out, went back to New York, went to film school for like a year, then kind of dropped out of that and re-enlisted. Did one final deployment and then moved back to Oklahoma. I was actually born in Georgia, but my dad and my mom moved up to New York simply because there was more job opportunities at the time. So. And his mom lived up there. So I've been living in New York for many years. And then, like I said, enlisted, went to the Air Force and came back home after an 8-year stint and went to film school. And, I don't know. I just kind of, the department just kind of fell apart and the school is actually closed now, go figure. But did that for a while. And then I finally found myself in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, which was kind of a fish out of water story because I never, I've been to country places, but living there is a total different experience. But it was good. I met my wife there, Lee, who I married about nine years ago. It'll be 9 years, I believe, in October. Then lived there and then moved from Oklahoma here to Florida it's been about 2 years now. But yeah, it's been good. God's been good to us here and opened up a door for Reformation Bible College where I attend.
What is it that you hope to do with that Bible schooling?
Oh, that's a good question. I kind of flip-flop. I'm 44. I'm kind of, it's funny. I'm 44. Most people have their careers by now. Here I am 44 and going back to school. But I would like to teach church history, whether in a school setting, teaching kids or teaching lay people in a church. So that's kind of where I've been going. I love history in general. Two of my favorite historical things are Civil War history and Revolutionary War. And simply because I grew up in the areas up there, up east. And then church history has been fascinating to study, and I have really enjoyed it. So, I've always wanted to take what I've learned and share it with others. And church history is that subject. And
right.
Like I said, I don't know yet. It's still kind of early. The Lord can change my plans overnight if He wants to. So, but that's kind of the goal right now, is to teach church history in a school setting.
Gotcha.
Lord willing, we'll see though.
Well, if I may pivot there, because it is something of a seemingly regular part of what you do post, depression, anxiety. And that is something that I have warned my listeners now a couple of 3 times, is that's probably going to be a bit of a mainstay in this podcast. Just for you, I was diagnosed with depression in 2019, and just the awareness that comes with that and staying on top of it. Had a really good friend of mine take his own life about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Just the sensitivity that comes with that. Has that been something that you have been dealing with for a while? Was it brought on by any one thing in particular? And for that matter, how long have you been kind of knowing that that's what you're up against?
I've had bouts of anxiety and depression for probably since my childhood, but they weren't like overwhelming. I think with the death of my father, my brother, it just really just plunged me deeper into it, headlong into my anxiety, headlong into my depression. And I think that's what, I had COVID back in November. So my anxiety was a little high. You can imagine just trying to, figure out what's going to happen, because so many, false information was going out, and the severity of the virus. So of course I had it and got it. And by God's good grace, I got through it with a mild, but it did kind of ping off my anxiety. And then in January and February with the death of my brother and my dad, it just brought it into full bloom, is what I can say. And it just kind of amplified my depression, amplified my anxiety times 10.
Sure. So I can only imagine what that's like. I mean, I've known maybe half a dozen friends or so that have dealt with COVID as well. Just dealing with the unknown, even when it seemed like they were giving out so much information, there was still that I think we all know now, it was still just a guessing game. I can imagine how that set you on edge, to have that followed by what happened in January and February with your father and brother. Could you talk a little bit about that? And I don't want to take you somewhere to that you don't want to go with that, but just see where, what was happening back then.
Well, with my dad, first of all, my dad's a very, very private, also a very stubborn man. That's who he was. He had a lot of problems growing up, but my stepmom noticed Thursday or Wednesday before that Saturday that he wasn't doing well. And he wasn't feeling good. And then by like Thursday was maybe Friday, she said he was having a good day. And then Saturday night, going into like the wee hours of the morning, he was delirious, not feeling well. So my stepmom called the ambulance for him to come. And it's probably about 3 a.m. Ambulance came over. This is in New York, mind you. And the hospital is like literally up the street. And the ambulance came over. They did the stats and all that. And, they, by right, they should have took him to the hospital. They should have, because I know a couple of ambulance drivers here told me that they would have taken him because of his age and whatnot. And he was like 60-something, 67. And my dad gave all the right answers. And that comes from being in the military. They asked him his name and all that. And he just, you're going to military mode. You give your name, your address and all that, all the stats. But then they left. They
didn't take him.
No.
Wow.
They didn't take my dad. And my dad refused to go. So they couldn't force him. But
sure,
my stepmom was urging them to take him, but they didn't do it. So my stepmom went out, did the laundry, came back and would unfortunately find him collapsed on the bedroom floor, not breathing. And then she called the ambulance. And of course, it took longer for them to come this time. So there was nothing they can do. They brought him to the hospital, tries to resuscitate him, and unfortunately couldn't do it. And so that was on a Saturday. I remember, I was at Target my brother had called first to let me know that he had gone to the hospital. And then I called my stepmom. She was frantic. And I was like, let me call the hospital, because she was there, but no one was talking to her. No one was giving her the slightest bit of answers. And
wow.
got in touch with the emergency room, and the guy said, hold on. And the doctor came on and just told me the news that they tried everything to resuscitate him. There was nothing they could do. I remember calling my brother and saying, hey, he's gone. Our dad's gone.
So you found out this stuff while you're in Florida before your stepmom, who was at the hospital, even found out.
Yeah, she was out there, and I had to tell the doctor to go out there and talk to my stepmom because nobody had come out there and talked to her.
Oh my gosh. But how much more that adds to the anxiety, the tension of what's already going to be incredibly high.
It adds more. And my stepmom was dealing with it. And, and the next thing I know, my brother, I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's telling me that he's having shortness of breath and not doing well. And it didn't click at first, simply because a week prior he had gallbladder surgery going on. So I was assuming that a lot of the surgery was causing to have that. And my stepmom had called the ambulance for him, and they took him to the hospital this time. And my brother went in probably for a couple of weeks, and they had him on high oxygen for weeks, and they had to make the decision to intubate him or not. And they had to intubate him. There was no way around it. So it was, some days were good, some days were bad. His oxygen's 88, and I thought for sure, Lord, this is good. He's going to get better. I'll be able to take care of him. And then February 7th, the day after his birthday, I was sitting in the bed, and the doctor gives me a call from the ICU unit, and I could hear the alarms going off in the background, but it didn't register. It was his alarms. His heart had stopped, and then he went into cardiac arrest, and they couldn't resuscitate him. What was even more kind of probably frustrating, she had mentioned that he had a neurological problem at the same time that his brain was slipping onto his spine, which where did that come from? Was that something he had in childhood that we didn't know about? But she never gave me a definitive answer. And of course the one thing I do remember about the doctor is that they pushed you not to get an autopsy. That was their big thing. And they're like, oh, we know what he died of. I regret it now. I wish I knew more and got the autopsy on my brother, but he passed away a day after his birthday, and it just kind of, just sent everything into a tailspin. On top of my dad. So it was, and that's my family. My mom had passed away back in 2002 when I was in Turkey. She passed of cancer. I was able to see her, go home on emergency leave, but that was basically my blood family. My mother, my dad, and my brother. That's all of them. We had such a small family. We didn't have anyone big. A big family. So to have all of my family gone, it was just unreal, and even is unreal to this day, till today.
So literally, how much time was between your father and your brother passing?
My dad passed on January 16th. My brother passed on February 7th. So 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks between the two. And it was just so fast. It happened so fast. It sent me into a tailspin. It affected me physically. I went to the hospital probably 10 times between the local hospital and the VA.
Really?
With anxiety problems. I thought it was my heart, but it was just anxiety. The anxiety attacks, panic attacks every night, frantic, scared, just really tearing me up.
Yeah.
And I even stayed a few days at the VA mental health facility, for 5 days, I think, and which was, they don't really do anything for you. They just kind of make sure they give you the medicine, make sure you're doing well, and then they release you on your way.
Yeah.
But it just kind of set me just in a tailspin. And even more, it made me really, maybe looking back now, it's probably a good thing, but really doubting my faith. I mean, I struggled with my faith and every day struggle with it. Like today I was having doubts of my salvation. Like, how could I be saved, with this anxiety and thinking of my past sins? And was I saved in Tulsa? I'm not like one of these people who have, an acute memory of when they were saved, the hour, the date, and the time. I don't have any of that. And so that kind of compounds on my anxiety, like, Lord, I can't remember if I was saved or not. Am I truly saved? And so I was going through all this. I mean, it just compiled on me and just really sent me down to a dark hole, depression and not being able to do anything, the anxiety attacks and just worrying, is it my heart? And I got a clean bill of health. They're like, you're healthy. You're just not grasping it, but your mind is just constantly going against you. Your thoughts are constantly going against you. And it's gotten easier now, though I still have my days, but then it was just a constant barrage of attacks every single day. Then on top of that, like, am I saved? Am I truly saved? Have I been born again? Do I know the Lord, or have I just been pretending this whole time? Like, I can carry a Bible and all that and have an intellectual knowledge, but was I truly saved? And so all these thoughts just really, it just felt overwhelming, and it just wouldn't stop.
Well, and I remember when you had basically put out the call for prayer, and that you were going to be making the journey back to New York to just kind of wrap up the final bits of details. Was that following both of the deaths, or was that just after your dad's?
That was following both of the deaths.
Okay.
Because at first we didn't plan to go up there because of COVID restrictions and what was going on. But then after the death of my brother, I had to go because I had to deal with the funeral, the crematory, and deal with his paperwork because I was his next of kin. So we decided to go, and everybody on Twitter and Facebook were so supportive and helped with the GoFundMe and all that for us to get up there financially and to take care of matters, pay for the cremation, pay for his things to get taken care of. So, but yeah, even that was hard in and of itself. Being in the same apartment and being in their empty rooms was another surreal experience, not having them there, because both my brother and my dad were both very lively people. They were the jokesters, and they really were. And to be in that apartment and not see them, both rooms, the bedrooms were just quiet.
Yeah.
It was hard to take in.
Well, that
and
leaves,
still hard to take in.
That leaves, I hope it doesn't sound so trite, but it leaves a hole, but it's everything is times two at that point. How did you contend with some of these mental issues of yours, having to go back, and it's like knowing that you are the one that has to take care of all this?
It was hard. It was really hard. Just about every day was filled with tears, filled with anxiety, because I was worried about my health. I got health anxiety. So I constantly worried about every ache and pain that I had on my body. So that compounded on, that just added to my worry. But, but being with my stepmom kind of helped, because we were both able to grieve with each other and talk with each other. My wife was there as well, and she was able to help. But it really is God's grace that I made it through. We drove up there, and drove back, and having anxiety both ways, it was quite a trip. But when I look back on it, it really is God's grace. It really is. Even though I have, struggling with doubt and struggling with doubts of assurance, God was certainly there, and I remember walking in my backyard when my brother was in hospital, praying to God and asking him, Lord, if it's your will to heal my brother, I would be very happy. If it's not your will, I'm not going to raise my fist or be angry with you. And, of course, getting the phone call of him passing was hard. And I suppose a lot of people in that time can turn away from God and turn in anger. And I didn't do that. I think I was so sad about it.
Sure.
But I accepted God's will in that. And it was hard. It's hard to swallow. It's hard to accept, especially when it's your loved ones. But is going up there and coming back. And even to this day, God's grace has been there, because sometimes when you get into this depressive state and this anxiety state, you just feel so alone. You don't see God next to you. You don't feel God next to you. And I had to learn that my feelings and that my thoughts are against me. They're not for me.
Yeah.
It's not about what I feel and what I think, thankfully. It's not about that. It's about his promises
Right.
in his word. And it was, it was bad that they passed, but it did wake me up to reality that, death is right around the corner. You don't know. I mean, my dad was 67, relatively young by today's standards.
Sure.
My brother was 33, 34 years old. And, the reality of death came right on the doorstep. It's like, you're going to die. And that sat within my mind because it was my dad, my brother. And I'm thinking, oh no, am I next in this? Is it something genetic? And it wasn't. It was, coronavirus, and their past, they had some physical problems going on too, secondary problems, which made the virus a whole lot worse for them.
Yeah.
But, in a way, just how God used it, because it snapped me to attention. It got my attention. It really did. And it caused me to really examine myself if I was in the faith or not. Because like I said, I didn't have one of those stories where I can remember the date of my salvation, the time and the hour where I was. So all that just really started to get on top of me and started to nag at me. And it caused me to really get closer to God and really pray to him. Because I admit prior to that, I was, calling myself a Christian, carrying my Bible, but was it just an intellectual knowledge that I had and not a heart, in my heart? So it really, and it still causes me even today to really go, examine myself, examine yourself, just always be looking. And sometimes I just overdo it.
Right. Sure. Oh yeah.
And that's what
trust
anxiety.
me, I know what that's like when you start to spiral in your own thoughts, and it just seems to add fuel to an already bad fire, and how quickly that can feel so out of control. I really, really do relate. Something you mentioned there makes me curious. How has your wife been through all of this? She's obviously got to contend with her husband, and what has happened with your side of the family there?
It is hard for her. It was hard at first for her because, she would do everything in her power to help me, and support me, which she does to this day. She's a godly woman, and she's always given me the direction I need to go into. But it was hard for her, especially when I had to stay at the VA for the mental health facility for 5 days. That probably tested our marriage more than anything, was being apart from each other. And of course I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go home on my own time. I was basically on the doctor's leash. And if he wanted to let me go, he let me go. And thankfully it was only for 5 days. But that really tested both of us. It tested her because she was by herself. Her family's not here. So she was on her own. I had the car. So, but just, we were able to talk to each other. I was able to call her daily from there, but she's been amazing. And we're going through counseling now with a Christian psychologist. And she's there with me, and she's able to hear my thoughts. And the doctor's able to give her advice on what she can do, because at first she didn't know what to do or how to react, because there's nothing physically she can do that to help me. It's all within me. But yeah, she's been amazing through all of this, and it's, it has made her stronger, but it has made me see her differently, to see how much she works in the marriage and devotes herself as a wife. And of course it makes me as a husband feel bad because I'm not doing all that. I'm letting my anxiety and depression get in the way, that I'm, not doing my husbandly duties as I should. And it awakens me to like, okay, Stephen, you need to, you're going to have your days like this, but for her, she's just been a big blessing. That's awesome. All I can say is she's been a big blessing through this.
Well, then would you say, you said that this, the death of your family caused an awakening in you. Does that help you find a purpose in their death when so much of it doesn't make sense? Yeah,
I would say so. Of course, at the time it happened, you don't see it.
Oh, sure.
You're filled with a fog of sorrow and grief, and their waves are constantly hitting you. But when it happened, there was an awakening. There was the light click coming on, so to speak, and like I said, God, I don't know all of God's counsel or his will, but I think part of his will was to get my attention in this, to wake me up and to get me out of my slumber, so to speak. I was too comfortable in my Christianity. And perhaps my Christianity wasn't real before this. I don't know. My wife tends to believe that because I was dealing with some sins in the past, that I had habitual sins. And also too, because I really grew up in a Arminian church that was kind of cultic in some sense, to where, you believed in your own works, you believed that you had to do this. And so I was dealing with that as well. And I think God is helping me deal with that, to stop depending on my thoughts, stop depending on my feelings, but to depend on his word and his promises. And it really, that's so sad. And, it's tragic, because now I can understand what other people are going through who have lost their loved ones to COVID. But to see how God is using this, and like I said, it didn't come right away, and I probably won't know the full thing until eternity. Yeah. But he woke me up. It was like a wake up call. Like, Stephen, wake up. Death is, no one's immune from it. Right. And, eternity is right around the corner. It's like, where are you going? Where are you going to spend eternity? And it woke me up. It really did. I have to remind myself that it is Christ who pulls me out of it, not myself. Yeah. And that, yes, there are things I can do, exercises to help with anxiety, exercises to help with depression, but he put people within my life now, my pastor, my elders, and a Christian psychologist, and even some of the VA doctors here and there. But to see how God is placing people right now has been very helpful. But to see his grace right now, there are so many stupid things I did back in the military, so many stupid things I did after that the Lord could have easily taken me, but he showed grace, he showed patience. Yeah. Those things, I don't deserve those things, but even in this right now, he's shown immense grace. I can't even describe it. Well, even the just death of my dad and my brother.
The grace to understand the things that you just laid out, the grace to know that the people that he's placed in your life right now are for your good and for your bettering, even in the midst of being so raw. And it's in reality, it's just been a few months that, my mother passed away in 2007, and I still have days where a song on the radio will just wreck me. There's always going to be something that will hearken you back to things like that. But I'm so thankful for the grace that God gives to have the right eyes to see that he's put people and he's put situations in your life that is for your comfort, for your peace, and for your hope. Where is your hope right now?
My hope, there are days where I feel apart from him, but he doesn't move. I think that's what I've come to realize, is that though I shift every day, I shift like the weather, not just who we are, but through the storms that have been coming, even though I have shifted, he's still there. And that's hard to take in sometimes, because you think God is far from you. God is far from me. But through it, he's there. He's never left. He's so compassionate and so loving, so merciful. And I just remember reading out of John, the leper who came to him, and the leper said, heal me if it's your will. And Jesus said, it is. And he healed him. Yeah. That Jesus is willing to touch a leper. Yep. He's willing to touch me and to save me. And it just really, I have my tough days, I'm not a happy, clappy Christian. I don't have smiles every day. I struggle every day with the anxiety. I struggle every day with the depression, and I've prayed consistently, Lord, take it away from me. But if it's not your will to take it away from me, let these things push me to you. And that's what they've been doing. I've noticed. I now, I used to wake up with anxiety at the night and freak out and want to call an ambulance. Now I find myself going to him in prayer more and just talking to him and going to the Lord. And I start to see these differences. My wife sees better than I do sometimes, and she's able to point out these things. And and going to the word more and going to prayer more. And I'm not perfect by any means. I'm still a faltered sinner. But to see how he's doing things, it just, it really blows my mind.
Sure.
It really does. Every day.
Well, then, true. And isn't it so like God to use something like this, to use your story in redeeming others, that when you've given that over to him, instead of getting so stuck in one of those spirals, when you actually hand that over to him and say, God, do with this what you will, that all of a sudden the story has purpose. You have purpose.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, it's, it's so necessary for that to happen because we're such a selfish people. And, we want to think we have some part in a lot of things, and we don't. But to let go, it's a cheesy thing, let go and let God. But it reminds me of, I think it's Psalm 46, where be still and know that I'm God.
Yep.
And these are the moments where God is saying, be still, know that I'm God, know that I'm sovereign. And it is hard. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's hard to really, we teach on the sovereignty of God, we believe in it, but when it comes to your life and this happens in your life, it really tests you, and it puts you to the test. Because now you're like, okay, am I going to back up what I talk with my faith and go, yes, Lord, you're sovereign over it, and it is your will. And it's hard, but you know what? It gets easier because then you start thanking God more and putting your faith in him. And you're not going to understand his will off the bat, and I don't think we ever will. But in those moments, I that Psalm, once again, be still and know that I'm God. Just let go of holding on to the monkey bars.
Yeah.
And there's a safety there. There he is, the net. And that's what he's saying. Trust me, believe me.
Dear listener, I am struggling with what I could possibly say in bringing this episode to a close. The last thing I want to do is stamp this with something trite or cheesy. This kind of story serves as a reminder of how we will all have to go through some things that seem to be impossible to even fathom. The unthinkable moments when you realize that all you can do is lean into God like you never have before. And that in those times, we should never despise anything that drags us to the feet of Jesus. In our darkest days, he will always meet us there. If you know someone who is going through some challenging times, consider sharing this episode with them. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send me an email. The address is steven@nookpodcast.com. I've got a link to Stephen Melniszyn's Twitter feed in the show notes, as well as a link to the Nook Facebook page. I'd love to have you following along there for encouragement and community. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you here next time in the Nook. The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.